and welcome to another episode on the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast. Today, I am jumping in and talking about the icky, yucky word sales. Now, as health practitioners, you mention sales and everyone cringes. We generally dislike it immensely. But what I have realized is it's actually a really, really important part of our job, and we can reframe it so that it doesn't feel quite so yucky. So, with that being said, let's get stuck in and talk about sales as practitioners.
We are child development obsessed, business besties, and mums, and we're here to spill all our secrets.
We have a combined 30 years experience working with children, and each episode we will bring you up-to-date research and evidence-based strategies to set your children up to thrive.
I'm Lizzy Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackie, Australian speech pathologist,
And this is the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast.
Hello. So yes, I'm flying solo again. I have caught up with Em though. She is doing so well, and baby Isaac is doing all the things he should be doing. So nice little update for you there. But something that I have been talking about with in leadership groups and other business owners at the moment is just the idea of sales, and it's something that comes up quite frequently because quite often sales ends up being the owner's job and responsibility. But when we really think about it, it's in every practitioner's role when they are working with a client. And we can definitely reframe it so that it doesn't feel like a salesperson on the phone, because that is not what it is. So obviously, most clinicians associate sales with pressure or persuasion, but in good healthcare, it's actually education, clarity, and confidence. It doesn't need to be pushy and pressure and gimmicky, I guess. It can be really, really authentic. And I think the biggest hack is to make it authentic for you and do what makes you feel comfortable. So over the past 6 months, I have been getting my team at Kids Heart Pilates to do sales. But do you know what? We do sales in every single session that we're doing, because when we're connecting with people and we are able to communicate the value of what we're doing, we're essentially selling them the value. And this is service, right? We're in a service industry, and this is what it entails, I guess. So families will quite often, or people will quite often feel overwhelmed and unsure what to do next. And if you have anything or any experience in sales, you'll know when there's uncertainty, you lose the sale. So it's very similar to client retention, which I talked about last week. So if we think about it, it's just really building on that and what I talked about in the last podcast. And if you haven't listened to it, I suggest you jump on, because I talk about retention strategies, client retention strategies. But I wanted to talk specifically about sales today because it's kind of the same thing. It is in a way just removing that doubt and that confusion in terms of what we're doing and the value that we're providing. Now, I feel like I've learned this in being an exercise physiologist, because I think that we have to continuously, or we have had to continuously educate on what exercise physiology does, the value in it. And then, of course, delving into pediatrics as an exercise physiologist, I very much had to I had a double whammy course of needing to educate people. And what I learned is that I actually, through that education, have really fallen in love. And I think this is probably how I fell in love with running my courses and teaching other people, was because I really liked educating people, because I liked learning myself. So I think, one, you need to be doing something that you really enjoy. If you're not enjoying your job and you don't value it, then I think that that is definitely going to impede the opportunity or the motivation to actually do that, to educate and create clarity, aka sales. So I think that is number one. You need to be working in an area, and it's not there's not going to be one way that works for everyone. So in my team, we do phone calls, emails, obviously client communication, systems which improve our sales, and drop-ins and PD sessions. And some people are going to love getting up and talking in front of people, or they're going to love connecting with people in person. Other people like to be removed from that face-to-face connection and prefer to be on the phone. And other people write and they like to update and communicate in that way. And really, I think we should be doing all of the above. But I think it's about what feels authentic and comfortable and genuine for you. I said to my team, right, I want you to talk to the educators in your centers that you go to. And I think working in early learning centers has really primed me, um, not necessarily for sales, but for education and for um, really honing my communication and identifying where educators and children and family are at, what they need to support them, and then being able to communicate that. And it definitely takes practice. I feel like over the years I've got a lot better. So just I think setting, and this is what I was talking about with last week in terms of the retention, like if we put those systems in place and we start having those conversations, the more we do that, the more comfortable we get doing it. And I think that if we start doing it with our clients, so we start putting the systems in place and focus on that retention with clients, we can then get our teams or ourselves feeling more comfortable with that communication, that education, and verbalizing, plus communicating through email and phone around that communication and education of parents and educators if we're working in the educator space. So getting comfortable in that realm first, I think, is really, really important and a perfect place to start. And once we feel comfortable in that space, I think the next level is to go and do some outreach. So dropping in with other allied health practitioners, dropping into kindergarten centers or early learning centers, going to an expo and talking to people. But I think if we come back to that, why do we do what we do? And how can we educate people on that? And then really meeting them where they need to be met, I think makes a really big difference. So I think that one of the things that we can just lean into is our passion for what we do and how can we educate other people in layman's terms. I think a lot of the time, and I do this all the time, I overcomplicate the communication because I'm like, I just need to put everything in there. There's like no discernment in terms of what information I'm providing. And I've actually got that feedback quite a lot just about how complex my communication can be. And so it's about actually just simplifying the communication and connecting and just being curious as to what people want and need, and then thinking about that from your passion and your perspective and meeting them there, but just in a really simple way. You don't need to lecture people, you don't need to go into too much technical detail. You just need people to understand what you're seeing, why it matters, and what the next step is. So that clarity is going to build trust. So I was in a meeting this week with some clinic owners, and they were saying that they wanted to build private clients in their clinic, but they didn't want to put the private clients in with certain practitioners because those practitioners didn't have the sales skills in order to convert that client into a regular session. And I think one of the things, and it kind of goes back to that retention episode, again, just having those systems in place. So there's obviously systems you can put in place for retaining clients, but there's systems you can put in place for your intake and your initial session to make sure that you take the next step. So I find that practitioners can, do their thing, which is whatever the mode or modality is in terms of your therapy. They can do the assessment, they can explain the assessment, but it's that next step. And it's about getting or offering what is the best possible scenario for that client. So if you know that a client is going to improve by doing 2 sessions a week or 1 session a week every week for at least 3 months, then why would we not be recommending that? Why are we, and I think it's Lorraine that says it, why are we jumping in that other person's wallet and deciding for them whether they can afford it? I think that's a really common mistake. So imagine that there is no funding barrier, that there is no thoughts, hesitation, misconceptions, there's no barrier. You're essentially doing it for free. Let's pretend you're providing this therapy for free because there's no such thing as money. For best case, best practice, how frequent would you need to see that client? That is what we should be recommending as the next step to what we've assessed. So if we feel like an intensive would be really good, if we feel like weekly sessions or bi-weekly sessions would work best, if we feel like a hydro session and a clinic session would work best, or a home visit would work best, we need to be advocating for that because that's what they come to see us for. And I talk about advocating for children as a practitioner or a clinician all the time, and this is exactly the same. And it might feel like sales, but you're really just putting forward what is going to get the best results. Then they can decide whether they can afford that or they want to afford that. And I think you can give them options, and clinics should have options, whether it's group sessions, fortnightly sessions, through to bi-weekly. And you could say, look, to get the best results, bi-weekly for the next 6 weeks would be amazing. If that's not on the cards, a one-on-one session would be amazing, once a week. If that's not on the cards, fortnightly. If we go beyond that, a group would be great because you get that frequency if budget is a concern, but we want the frequency in there. And so you're just being honest with them because we know that. And I think it's just, leaning into that is really important. So here are 3 sales tips for practitioners to convert, or what's a non-salesy word, to get a client to come back and see you for ongoing sessions. And that's what we should be doing, because if we think about what's going to be best for the client and their outcomes, then they need to be seeing us more than once. Like, we value ourselves a little bit more than that. I am positive. So here's 3 tips. 1, lead with what you see. So instead of explaining theory, start with observation. Example, I noticed that when she jumps, she's struggling to generate power through her legs. Or I see when she's sitting down, she's sitting in a W sit. That generally can mean that we're, avoiding using our core. But we want to connect to what we're both seeing and what the parents are seeing, and probably, to be honest, why the parents are there. Then you want to explain the impact. So when she sits like that, or when she's not jumping like that, or when I don't know, let's take the W sitting. So when she's sitting like that, she's actually widening the base of her support, so she doesn't need to use her core muscles. And if she's not using her core muscles, of course, she's not going to build endurance in her core muscles, which means that we are not going to strengthen them, and we're going to just keep getting weaker and weaker. And then you want to give a clear recommendation. I almost did that without giving the tip. So we want to then say, so what really want to do, or what you can be doing at home for starters, great to give them a strategy straight away. So what this is doing is giving them exactly that, what you're observing, what that means, and what they can do, a strategy. So they're getting like an intervention straight away. And this is obviously simplifying it. You would do this through like in an assessment, but you could be doing this as you go. So what I would recommend is at home, anytime you see her sitting like that, just pull her legs forward, get her to sit up on a stool. We want to get away from that W sitting, so we're using the core a little bit more. And what I'd really recommend, because I'm seeing A, B, C, D, and E throughout other assessments, is strengthening her core, because when we strengthen her core, we're going to get her in a great position to then work on those gross motor skills. And when we've got gross motor skills, we can do fine motor skills and all our other intricate skills. And really what I'd recommend is a 6-week block initially of some Pilates-based exercises or play-based core intervention to really build on that core strength, and we'll give you some strategies to try at home. So it's really about just resetting the mind shift. And I think mindset shift, I think that in my experience, practitioners actually are too scared to say what they see when it's a bit of a red flag. They therefore won't explain it, and they then won't make a recommendation. So I think it's, if you start with what you can see and then what that means, and then your recommendation based on that, it's just a really easy flow of communication that I feel is very genuine, and it's educating, and it's inadvertently selling, because you're setting them up with a plan and they need to say yes or no. It's very clear what you're recommending, a 6-week block to begin with of sessions, and they can then choose whether they need to do that. So it's, I feel like, a really simple way to, again, like just a system to set us up for converting any new clients that are coming through the door without any like sales courses, or without even referring to it as sales, because if sales feels yucky, then we're just communicating how we can best look after clients beyond a first session. And this is the system that we use. And by doing this well, families feel supported, children get the help they need, and clinics grow sustainably. And we can apply this to every offer that we have. I can apply this in a kindy setting. I know that if I go into a kindy every single week, and I also mentor the educators and upskill them and give them strategies every week for 10 weeks in a row, then we're going to get a more regulated, more regulated class, more fulfilled educators, and we're setting these kids up for a more pleasant experience, particularly those ones that aren't getting therapy. So do what feels authentic and genuine for you, and try this simple 3-step little formula I've got for sales or serving your clients. I would love to hear how you go with this, and if you've got a team, how well they receive it. And yeah, keep me posted. If you like this episode, please, I'm going to forget it this week, like, share, and review our podcast. And we will see you next week. All right, bye.